You want me to call it to order?
Yes, so, Denise is not here
So that
today.
means, okay, I didn't realize that. I was,
Yeah,
okay,
at the last meeting, she said she wouldn't be able to make it today, so we have you in charge, Rob. So if you want to just call it to order.
okay. Okay, so at 5:37 PM, I'm going to call to order the Plan Commission meeting for the Village of Sister Bay on December 15th, 2022. Roll call, Zashki here.
Ron Kane,
Kane here.
David Schmitz,
Here.
Patrice Champeau.
Here.
And we know that Marge has not been able to join us. Denise is excused and Nate is excused as well.
Right.
So,
Okay.
so we do
Okay.
have a quorum. We do have a quorum.
Yeah, well, it's not anymore.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, you got it then.
I will,
Can we just
I
have
will-
whoever, Rob, just real quick, whoever, Don, I think that might be you. We can hear some background noise, so it's just difficult for us to hear. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Rob.
is there any correspondence, Heidi, of note?
There was one letter received this afternoon from Dr. Jeff Poggle, which was forwarded to you, so hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any comments or concerns from the public that's joining in on a non-agenda item this evening? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to motion that we approve the agenda as published.
So
Do I
moved.
have a second? All in
Second
favor,
by
say
Ron.
aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Heidi, do we have minutes to approve?
There are minutes from the November 22nd Plan Commission meeting in the packet.
Okay. Any discussion on those, commission members?
Move to
A
approve.
Okay. I will second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Julie, can you walk us through the rest of the agenda?
Sure, I will, if you're okay with Rob, just turn it over to me and I'm gonna open up the public hearing. Opening it up at 5:40 on my time here on my computer. What we're gonna do is we are going to run through some public hearings that are on the agenda that have been published in the paper. We are gonna take public testimony on those public hearings. We will close the public hearing, we will discuss the matters and possibly vote on what to do with them or continue discussing them possibly at the next meeting. So I'm gonna start the first public hearing or ordinance, I'm sorry, that we're gonna take testimony on is ordinance 307, which is annexation of land. And real quick, this property that is subject of the annexation is located at what is known as this Village of Sister Bay Sports Complex. It's the land that we thought we had annexed years ago. It comprises basically that land that is west of, I think that's west of Autumn Port. So it's the ice rink, where the boats are, the trailers are, where the gardens are. Just through a very minor procedural error years ago, the annexation wasn't filed correctly, so we just have to redo the annexation kind of. So that's what this is about. It's not to annex anything new or anything that we didn't think we owned before. It's really just a cleanup annexation ordinance. So with that, do we have any comments on that ordinance? All right.
That's
All right, Diane, go ahead.
and so we are adjacent to that area, and I have no concerns or issues with that.
Can't hear.
Okay, so it is difficult to hear you, Diane, but I believe you said you had no concerns with the annexation. Was that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the comment. Did we have anybody else with comments on that one? All right, well, we will close that portion of the public hearing and move on to the next one, which is ordinance 305. This is called clarifying camping terms, definitions for living quarters, duplexes in R2, public improvements on private land. And with that one, some of these are cleanup measures as well, and I'm just going to run through them really quick. So the first one clarifies how long a camper can be on a piece of property. We had a case where we ordered the camper removed and the person challenged us, and when we looked at the code, we said, you know, it could be cleaned up a little bit. It could be more clear what the time is, make it a little more user friendly. The second part of that ordinance is to create a definition for bathroom facilities. Right now, we don't allow living quarters in an accessory building, and we use terms, we refer to some things such as bathroom facilities and living quarters, but we really don't have, but they're not defined. So what, again, it's a cleanup matter. It adds a definition for bathroom facility, one for living quarters. The other portion of that ordinance is in the R2 zoning district, which everybody usually thinks of means 2 residential or duplex. There was an oversight when that ordinance was drafted, and it did not include duplexes as an allowed use. So again, a cleanup matter to make sure duplexes are allowed in the R2 zoning district. Then the final part of that ordinance is referring to improvements on public land. And this became a conversation when we started talking about putting public trails across private property. And we want to make sure that if people are willing to give us an easement for that trail, that they are not suffering, that they don't have damage. So we wanted to make sure that that trail wouldn't count against their lot for, let's say, impervious surface calculations or affect the setbacks that are required. So that amendment basically is to make sure the property owner's rights are protected if we go ahead and do a public improvement like a trail across their property. So with those in mind, I'm going to take public testimony on ordinance 308. Does anybody have any comments? Does anybody have any comments? All right, I'm not seeing any comments, so we will close the portion of the hearing on ordinance 308, and we will move on to the next one, which is ordinance 309, list of park uses. So over a year ago, we cleaned up the ordinance. We looked at all, I shouldn't say cleaned it up, but we looked at the uses that were allowed in every zoning district. And they never got to the parks district, so they were never able to actually go through that list and say, what do we want, what don't we want? So just to, again, try and clean up some old matters, the committee went through and they looked at the list of uses in the park district. And they pretty much, you can see the list there, but basically removed a lot of things referencing private to make sure it was public uses that would be allowed in that park district. And then also deleting a lot of conditional uses that were listed that we are not seeing, that we don't have room for, that we haven't had interest for, that trends are not supporting. And that would basically be conflicting with private business. And we didn't want to do that. So the list of uses is was published in the paper and online if you happen to look online. So with that in mind, I will take comments on ordinance 309 Park District list of uses. Are there any comments? Are there any comments? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to ordinance 310, outdoor entertainment facilities. Outdoor entertainment facilities are something that grew out of the conversations that we had on the noise ordinances. since spring, I think we've been talking about noise and how can we manage it? How can we address it? There's been several proposals, and some changes that affect the municipal code, not the zoning chapter in it, but the other sections of the municipal code. They were forwarded to the board. Some cleanup matters, some things just, I would say minor noise amendments. But there still was that issue about what do you do with the bars or outdoor entertainment facilities? And so what was discussed at the last meeting that we decided to move forward to a public hearing was to create a land use category called an outdoor entertainment facility. And basically what that is saying is if you want to have, for example, a bar that provides music outdoor, you would need to get a conditional use permit. It would be allowed in certain districts. And there would be some rules established for that outdoor entertainment facility. You know, it looks at delineating the perimeter of it, talks about activities not occurring outside that delineated entertainment area. It talks about the decibel level and the time that you can have that noise at that decibel level. It talks about parking. And then it specifies that it would be allowed by conditional use in the B1, the B3, and the P1 zoning district. And then just as a little cleanup note, there's also an amendment clarifying what noise regulations you follow if you were a wireless telecommunication facility, which is a cleanup thing that we really haven't done much. We haven't talked to, there hasn't been discussion on it. It's really a cleanup matter. So as with any new use that gets established, the old uses become grandfathered if they're in compliance. Grandfathered is a term that the public uses. It really means legal non-conforming use. So if you are doing something and all's good and the code changes, you become a non-conforming use. But if you're doing it legally and you had all the permits and permissions you needed, you're considered a legal non-conforming use. So even the code changes, you can still operate the way you were. You don't have to comply with that new code unless, of course, you decide to change your operations by expanding, closing your doors for 12 months, or have something, other activity that would trigger the non-conforming use regulations to be applicable to you. So that is a summary of the outdoor entertainment facility regulations. At this point, I will open it up for comments from the public. Bjorn?
Thanks, Julie. Okay, everyone, I'm here on behalf of ALS tonight. I just want to address two things. The first is regarding the proposed code itself, and the second is just some general observations that I've had over the last few months as this has been going on. So first, on the proposed code, we don't really have any major objections, but that's only on the condition that, of course, we're grandfathered under the rules that we've been operating under for the last several years. And I know Julie and I have kind of gone back and forth on some of these terms over the last few months. I think the most, just as a legal matter, the most important thing that I think needs clarifying is just under sub 3 of the ordinance, we just need to clarify for where and for how long the decibel reading shall occur. So I know, as an example, under the general noise provision of the code, it's like 30 seconds measured from the lot line. So I think it's just important to clarify in this ordinance how that reading is going to occur for an outdoor and entertainment facility. And then my third point on the code, we would prefer 11 o'clock for all future outdoor entertainment facilities, but that's just based on the current norm so that all these establishments are on a level playing field. So as an example, just for competitive purposes, Husby's really shouldn't be the only one allowed till 11 o'clock. And when everyone else has to stop at 10, it's just for competitive reasons. It's not necessarily for our sake. I mean, we prefer to stop at 10 o'clock. I mean, I don't want to be open for live music and crazy past 10 o'clock. So it's just a competitive reason. So now just some general observations over the last few months. It's not really tied to the code, but just kind of like the reasoning that went behind this. So number one, regarding any like categorical decibel reductions, so I have to like really submit to everybody that's really it's improper. It's a horrible way to legislate without any concrete data or expert testimony, because we don't even know what reducing the decibels by X amount of points would even accomplish. Does it address the base? Does it address every single home within 10 miles of the village will not hear the music? We have no idea. I mean, we're not sound experts. I'm not a sound expert. I mean, to make just an arbitrary decibel reduction without any kind of testimony in the record is just, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard with a blindfold on, and that's probably going to have some very poor unintended consequences. I'm not saying that this is what that does under the current ordinance, but just kind of some observations that I've had over the last several months. And then secondly, just as a general thing moving forward, you know, the village can't operate in a way that's going to regulate our outdoor bars out of the market with these types of proposed regulations. You know, for our bars, they're heavily dependent on live music. It's a completely different financial night for both the establishment and the bartenders when there's live music. And yes, the type of band and how loud the band is allowed to play does have a significant difference here. So, I mean, just generally speaking, Sister Bay has to remain competitive with the other Door County municipalities on nightlife. And we can run the real risk of losing ground to Egg Harbor and Bailey's Harbor on the destination for live music in the county. And, you know, just generally speaking, we can't return the downtown area back to the dead zone it once was when we've all tried so hard to make it a vibrant business district. So just in conclusion, I think in general, Julie's done a good job with this regulation. I mean, I think it's a reasonable compromise. And I mean, as long as there's no significant changes like the last time around, I think we're pretty okay with it. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Bjorn. Is there anybody else who has comments on this ordinance? Ordinance 310. Is there anybody else that has comments on ordinance 310? All right, hearing none, we'll close that portion of the hearing and move on to the final matter, which is the certified survey map for Lundquist Properties LLC. And what this is anytime you divide property that would be a CSM, it does require a public hearing. And any recommendation that comes out of the Plan Commission has to go to the village board for approval. What we have here is Lundquist Plumbing is looking at splitting their property along Highway 57. They're looking into doing it into a front lot and a back lot. When the Plan Commission reviewed this matter at their last meeting, they had some concern about the lot line jogging around a guy wire pole or support. So the CSM was adjusted per our request. And the copy of the proposed CSM is in the packet, and anyone that looked online, it was online there. So we are now taking comments on the certified survey map for Lundquist Properties LLC. Are there any comments? Are there any comments? Hearing none, we're gonna close the public hearing at this point at 5:56, and we're gonna move into discussion and talk about each of the public hearings or each of the ordinances that were just that we took public comment on. So I am gonna start with ordinance 307, the annexation of the land. Committee members just want to look for some brief discussion on that, see if maybe we can make a recommendation to the village board on that matter.
What kind of a motion do you need?
It would just be a motion to recommend to the village board adoption of the annexation ordinance.
So moved.
All right. Seconded by Ron. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries unanimously, so that will go to the village board for adoption, for approval. The next one is ordinance 308, clarifying camping terms, definitions for living quarters, duplexes in R2, public improvements on public private land. Do we have any discussion on that or any questions or comments on that one? If we don't, we would entertain a motion to recommend to the village board that they adopt that ordinance.
So moved.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, so motion carries unanimously. We would be putting ordinance 308 onto the village board with the recommendation that it be adopted. Next is ordinance 309, the Park District list of uses. We spent a lot of time on this one, so I'm not sure if we have any conversation on this one either, but does anybody have any comments or questions on this one? No? All right, we'd entertain a motion then to move this one forward to the board for either adoption or rejection.
So moved.
All right, motion by Ron to recommend the village board adopt the ordinance,
Second.
seconded by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. That one. We'll move forward to the village board for adoption as well. Next, we have ordinance 310, the outdoor entertainment facilities. And I'm just gonna make some comments real quick on before we get into discussion on some things Bjorn said. He talked about how it is lacking terms on the consistency of how you measure and everything. You know, I believe when we looked at this, we thought that by saying that it was, you had to comply with the other noise regulations, that was covered adequately. But we can clarify it. We can add more language if you want before we send that to the board. And then the second matter was he prefers that the noise regulation be 11. My understanding was, and you know, board, you're going to have to chime in, or committee, you're going to have to chime in on this, but my understanding was, yeah, 11 is probably a little bit too much. Let's let the guys that are, or the businesses that are operating at 11 continue. But anybody new that comes on board would just have to stop at 10. We had also heard, I believe from some of them that said they don't even stay open that late. I think it was Husby said they closed up when we talked to Chad, or maybe it was a private conversation with Chad, but said usually they don't keep the music going that late anyway. So I think that was kind of the thought on the 10 o'clock, stopping it at 10 o'clock instead of leaving it at 11. Just felt there were enough doing it at 11, let them phase out, new ones come in at 10, and eventually over time, we would all end up with a 10 o'clock decibel curfew, so to speak. So just want to have some conversations on those. What do you think about what Bjorn brought up? Do we need to change anything?
Let's remember too that all three of the business, actually two of them abut the parks and one is within 50 yards. And the parks are set to be quiet at 10 o'clock. So that's another reason why we suggested 10 o'clock. You can't be quiet in the park at 10 o'clock if you've got three businesses going across. And then secondly, I really think that the letter from Dr. Pagel, we do need to work on enforcement, because if you have a problem at 10 o'clock at night, who do you call and how do we verify? We cannot, if we're not going to take an owner's cell phone reading, we need to then have some sort of a method to verify what the sound was.
Yeah, and just a little comment on that, David, for anyone that's, I think I've mentioned it to the Plan Commission, but you know, my goal is to start having those meetings this winter to cover the idea of having a village police officer, somebody that would either cover Sister Bay or jointly cover Sister Bay and Ephraim or one of the other communities. Those are long conversations. It's going to take a while, but ultimately that's going to help a lot, I think, especially with the enforcement part of it.
So even if that were not to happen, the quote unquote enforcement or the measurement would still be up to, you know, the village would still be accountable for that.
That is correct. Yeah.
It sounds like what we're looking for is some verbiage to say, a representative of the Village of Sister Bay will take decibel readings as necessary with a certified decibel meter from such and such a lot line position.
Well,
And then that way it covers us, whoever that is from the Village of Sister Bay that would be taking the enforcement reading, right?
well, we had that in one of the previous drafts and the committee chose to take that out. So I don't know about putting that back in. Like I said, it was removed. I think the thought was it didn't need to be specified. It didn't need to be talking about what type of meter you had. The reality is it's a code. It has to be enforced like all the other codes. But admittedly, it's a challenge. Noise is a challenge to enforce. And that's why a lot of communities just don't mess with it. I think that's also why, I know when I was looking at these, that's why I also said, let's try a different approach and get more away from pure noise regulation and instead looking at the land use and see if there's ways we can mitigate noise by maybe confining the area or the hours or the locations. Do we want to make changes to this and send it back for another public hearing? Do we want to leave it as is and forward it to the board?
Julie, if we, in the next couple of months, come up with a way, so for instance, we don't tell our inspector how to measure setbacks from a lot line, is that correct? We just say do it.
That's correct.
Right, so we could, if we had a city official and say, please enforce the music, we're not gonna, obviously they're gonna use industry standards to do so. So I don't think we need to put it in. I do have one other question. If one of these businesses that are going to be grandfathered were to change ownership, does the grandfathering go with the business or with the liquor license?
It goes with the land. So even if it changes hands, even if the business changes name, that permit is still valid because a permit is issued to a piece of property. So now when they agree to a development agreement, they agree to certain things. That is to a person, but it's recorded on a property deed. So when that property changes hands, that development agreement shows up on that new person's deed as well. And it shows up on their title work as well.
So let me also ask one more to clarify. So currently, if Wild Tomato wants to move into outdoor music, are they grandfathered or do they come under the new entertainment?
We never discussed or considered them as being an outdoor entertainment facility.
Okay.
Yeah, they're classified as a restaurant. I think that's the only way we've
We're
ever.
basically talking about 1211. Actually, we're not talking about them.
No.
So we're talking about Husby's, Stabur, and Boathouse,
And the bowl
and the Bowl. Okay,
and the Peach Barn.
okay. Thank you.
Julie, I have a question. Is the Peach Barn considered a new outdoor venue, music venue, or is that grandfathered in for anything?
So they were established 2 years ago, I think maybe, and they actually were permitted as an, I think it was an outdoor beer. I can't remember how it was, but the word outdoor was in their name. But because we never had the term outdoor entertainment facility, they were not authorized that way. Now they are going to be coming before you for an expansion of their operations. And normally I would say they would have to comply with those new outdoor entertainment rules. But they won't for various reasons, which I'll go through when we actually process that one. But they pretty much meet these guidelines anyway. They're pretty close to being in full compliance with this. So they're They have not been an issue for us as far as noise or anything. The only issue we've really had with them is related to parking. And they're doing some things out there to try and address the parking problems that they've had. All right, so what do we want to do? Do we want to change anything, or do we want to make a motion to forward it to the board as written for adoption?
I think it's going to be difficult to enforce this decibel thing. Bands are loud, they just are. I think we are going the right direction, that we are saying anybody new 10 o'clock, you're done. And I understand we have to grandfather in the 4 downtown that have been doing it for years. That, is only fair, makes sense. So maybe by having that new ordinance, 10 o'clock, you're done, will help. We just don't want a runaway horse here with the music and all that. But I think going around to everybody's establishment saying, you're playing too loud, you're fine, you're not. Even if we had a constable, he would probably be only responding to complaints or something. I don't know. I think we need to, I think there should be a nice understanding between the village and these owners, like, come on, within reason, don't blow the rooftops off. But you can play till 11 if you're old, or till 10 if you're new.
Yeah, we did have some conversations earlier this summer that one of the problems we had with enforcement was the code said one thing. There was a liquor license agreement that said another thing. And then development agreements would say another thing, and those development agreements weren't even consistent. So you had all these different rules. Everybody was playing by different rules. With this, if you're grandfathered, you've got a rule. If you're new, you've got a rule. And I do think, I know when I had talked to the establishments, they do watch it. When I was talking to Stabor, they actually go out there and they take their own readings, and they try to keep, they make an effort to make sure it stays within the guidelines. I know Husby's watches the time, how long they're playing and stuff. So I do think they want to be good partners. We're a small community. They don't want to irritate people. So I'm hoping that things will get better. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. Do we have a motion either way?
A motion that we go forward and have the village board review what our plan is to grandfather in the 4 that have had that those hours in the past, and that new establishments have to cut off at 10 o'clock.
All right, so it would be.
Yeah, I think we've got, I think all that is already been discussed and is in there, right, Julie?
Yeah.
So what we're looking for is a motion to recommend, as noted, the ordinance to the village board.
Right, it would be Patrice's concerns are addressed in there, so that's a good thing. And I took your motion to mean, yes, go ahead and move it forward to the board for adoption, is how I understood. Is that right, Patrice?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it, Rob.
Second by Rob. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries. The next one is the CSM for Lundquist Properties. They've done what we've asked. What do we want to do with that one?
A motion that we approve.
Go ahead, Rob.
All right, so a motion by Rob to approve and a second by Ron. Was that
Second.
right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, So we'll move that one forward to the board as we see tonight, not as per the old version. And with that, the only other thing we have left on our, I'm sorry, real quick, motion carried unanimously on that one, guys, on the CSM.
Aye.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
And then the only thing we have left on the agenda is just to talk about the next meeting. The next regular meeting is January 24th. So a little over a month away. It's already filling up with some good fun things for you. One of the things, if any of, for those of you that were at our joint meeting on the Wiltie property, you heard us talk about a ordinance amendment to allow cluster subdivisions or conservation subdivisions. So we will be discussing that. That's an exciting new proposal for the village. So I'm going to try and have that to you in advance so you can start looking that over. And then we have a couple applications we'll be discussing. Peach Barn is one of them that we'll have at that meeting. So Rob, the only thing left is adjournment. And as chair, I'm going to turn it back over to you for that.
Okay, at 6:13 PM, I motion that we adjourn.
I second that motion.
Okay, second by Patrice.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone, and good evening to you all.
All right, thank you.